town filled with narrow minds and hate. They used to laugh at me, their children called me names. I would run and hide, feeling so ashamed just for being born. I was just a boy, punished for a crime that was not mine. Life ain't so easy when you're a kid.
Hello, I'm Claudrine Jackson, and I want to thank you for tuning in to A Spoonful of Comfort. A Spoonful of Comfort is something that we all can do. We all have comfort, and we can give comfort. We don't have to look to other folks to give us comfort. We can give comfort. And we can also give peace and love because they're free, doesn't cost anybody anything, and they're easy. Everybody has it. Even my son who has a handicap, when I tell him Mama needs a hug, he comes to me, smiles, and comes to me and gives me a big hug. So even he wants to share comfort. So remember, that's what the Spoonful of Comfort is all about, because a spoonful is the smallest amount that you can give of anything. And if a spoonful of medicine goes a long way, maybe a spoonful of comfort will also go a long way. I know there are times when a spoonful of comfort went a long way for me. So I want to give you some of my contact information. You can contact me by email, which is Jackson Claudrine, CLAUDREEN, at sbcglobal.net. You can also contact me through the Purvis Foundation Post Office Box 04422, Detroit 48204. Also, I have a blog. My blog is called A Spoonful of Comfort. So if you're on the computer, if you type in a spoonfulofcomfort.org, you will see my blog. And the artwork that you see on the blog is my son's artwork. You know, I say that he can't read or write or talk or live independently, so I use his artwork to show that even he can do something. So just because someone is deficient in some areas don't mean they're deficient in all areas. And that's something that we need to remember. Last week, I said thank you to Norma Fambro for her sizable donation to the Purvis Foundation. The week before that, I thanked J.P. Morgan Chase, their Employees Good Works program, for their donation to the Purvis Foundation. This week, I want to thank the Detroit Institute for Children, not because they gave us money, but because the foundation gave them money. The Detroit Institute for Children has been around for over 90 years, and they help people with conditions such as my son's, and they're available to everyone. But when my son was born in the 70s, they weren't available. Autism was called the orphan disability in the 70s, and Easter Seals and March of Dimes and Children's Center and Detroit Institute for Children, none of them had anyone with autism on their cases. So I'm sorry that autism has expanded so, because I would have thought that by now there wouldn't be any autism. My son was born in 75. Nobody had ever heard of it. I'm just amazed that it has spread so much that the diagnosis is far more prevalent now than it was back then. But Detroit Institute for Children has been helping all disabilities, and they added autism. They tell me about 20 years ago, they added autism to their list of list of disabilities that they helped. So I want to thank them. Parents like me need agencies like the Detroit Institute for Children because we always need help. Even me, at my advanced age, and my son is 42, I still need help. I've always needed help. So it's wonderful to have an agency that you can call on for help. So since this is a spoonful of comfort, Your comfort for today comes from Romans 8:18, which says the sufferings of the present day are not worthy to be compared to the glory which will be revealed in us. These are troubled times. I'm troubled. Many people are troubled because we seem to be under a leadership deficit. But that's why we have to step up to the plate and not wait for our leaders. So the glory that will be revealed in us if we go through these sufferings. Also, John 14:27 says, let not your heart be troubled, neither let it be afraid. It's hard to not let your heart be troubled now. But this is where faith comes in. Last week I talked about faith. They say when you fear something, you counter it with an affirmation of faith. So this is when we need faith at times like this. If everything is going well, then we don't use our faith as much as we do when things are going bad. But I wish that that things hadn't happened the way that they did, but there's nothing we can do about it at the moment. The people who are trying to do something about it, hopefully they will be successful. Another quote I wanted to give you is about mistakes. A lot of times we make mistakes, and I read this somewhere that to make no mistakes is not in the power of man, but the wise and the good use their mistakes to learn how to act in the future. So it means learn from your mistakes. And that's something that we all can do. Learn from our mistakes. Don't feel bad that you made a mistake, but learn from it. So I'm going to take a short break. I will be back with you in a minute. Thank you for staying with A Spoonful of Comfort.
When I was 17, I ran away from home and from everything I had ever known. I was sick and tired, living in a town filled with narrow minds and hate. They used to laugh at me, their children called me names, I would run and hide.
Thank you for staying with me on A Spoonful of Comfort. I want to mention the theme song, which is by the Spinners. I was married to Purvis Jackson of the Spinners. The theme song is Ghetto Child. And some of the words to Ghetto Child are, they used to laugh at me, the children called me names, I would run and hide, feeling so ashamed, just for being born. Why must I be blamed, ridiculed, and shamed? We're all the same. Life ain't so easy when you're a ghetto child. That resonates with me because it also relates to handicapped children. They get made fun of a lot, laughed at, and people calling them names. Now with my son, he didn't know that people were making fun of him, but I knew, and it hurt me, but it didn't hurt him. But ghetto child kind of captures what I would feel about our children with handicaps. We see more people out and about now because there are more of them. And when my son first came along in the 70s, I was on Governor Blanchard's committee in the 80s. My son came along in the 70s. I joined Governor Blanchard's committee for the state of Michigan, people with developmental disabilities. In the state of Michigan, the governor has over 100 advisory committees. I was on his advisory committee for people with disabilities. It was called the DD Council, and it's because my son's disability was a developmental disability. And a developmental disability means it's something you were born with. It's not a disability that you got from an accident or an illness. So serving on Governor Blanchard's committee with trying to help in the whole state of Michigan. We did not meet with the governor, but we met with each other, and we made recommendations to the governor about what should be done for people in the state of Michigan. For example, one of our meetings, the people that are wheelchair bound came to the meeting and mentioned that after it became law that you had to have a ramp, they mentioned that the slope was too high. So they wanted, from now on, the ramp slope to be lower. Now, who would have thought of that other than someone who was going through it? So being on his advisory council taught me a lot about what governors do in the state. I served twice under Governor Blanchard, and I also served under Governor Engler. So I was proud that they cared enough to have advisory committees. They had advisory committees for over 100 different things. I was only on the one advisory committee. And Governor Blanchard used to have Sunday brunches at his home on Mackinac Island. So from 1 to 3 Sunday, he would have 3 or 4 of his complete committees come up for brunch. And that was a great honor, and it really inspired me to continue to want to be an advocate for people with disabilities. Now, I was talking about faith, and this is an old song. Everyone knows this song. The Lord will make a way somehow. But this also shows faith. When you say, well, the Lord will make a way. The Lord has made a way many times for me, and I'm sure he has for you too. But the words to the Lord will make a way are like a ship that's tossed and driven and battered by an angry sea. When the storms of life are raging and the fury falls on me, I wonder just what I have done that makes my race so hard to run. Then I say to my soul, don't worry, the Lord will make a way somehow. The last 2 things that I read to you are songs, so just be glad I didn't sing them. I recited them to you, but I didn't try to sing them because my husband was a singer in the family, and my daughter sings also. I have another something I want to read to you about faith. And this is a poem that I wrote years ago. It's called He Who Holds the Future. And we need faith now. We have to remember that we are our own leaders at the moment. So Dr. Norman Vincent Peale says that the only thing more powerful than fear is faith. And that when you have fear, then you counter it with the thought of faith. And that has worked for me. So this poem is called He Who Holds the Future. When storms are raging round me and I'm drowning in quicksand and unhappy things are happening, things that I don't understand, when I don't know what else to do, I'll just do what I can. Because He who holds the future, He also holds my hand. I'll believe that God is with me every step of the way. If He brought me to it, He'll bring me through it. So in His care, I will stay. And I will face my future according to His plan. Because He who holds the future, He also holds my hand. And I'm old enough to have been through a lot of ups and downs, and I know many of you are too. And when you look back and see what you've been through, you wonder, how in the world did I come through that? But we are strong, we're resilient, and we can make it through. Now, I don't know how many of you are familiar with Susan Taylor. Susan Taylor was the editor of Essence magazine for many years, and she always opened the magazine with a column that she wrote. Well, she wrote a book also, and her book was called Lessons in Living. And in her book, she said for us to remember that what we sent out into the universe is what comes back to us from the universe. You know, I mentioned that before, karma. What you put out is what you get back. And that reminded me of Proverbs 16 and 24. One of my favorite scriptures is that pleasant words are like a honeycomb. They are sweet to the soul and health to the bones. So, pleasant words, that's something we all can do. That's something that's very easy. And especially if you don't feel like giving pleasant words, but you do it anyhow, then I hope you're proud of yourself about that. Susan Taylor was one of the authors that I wanted to mention. I also wanted to mention Khalil Gibran. Now, he was before our time, but he wrote a book called The Prophet. And The Prophet was a book that I really, really loved, and it had a great impact on me. But his book, The Prophet, helped me deal with my son when I was overwhelmed and depressed, and how am I going to handle this? In his book, The Prophet, he spoke on different topics, and on children, he said, your children are not your children. They are the sons and daughters of life's longing for itself. They come through you, but not from you. You can give them your love, but you can't give them your thoughts. Now, that's something for all of us to remember for our children. It helped me a lot of times when I didn't like what PJ was doing and didn't know what to do about it. I can give him my love, but I can't give him my thoughts. And PJ did grow. He's 42 now, and he's far more pleasant and agreeable than he was back then when I didn't know what I was going to do. A couple of the stories about PJ that Khalil Gibran helped me with when he said your children are not your children. They come through you, but not from you. I remember, and the first time I took PJ to camp, he was 7 years old, and I was nervous about taking him to camp because his behavior was very, very challenging back then. Challenging is using it lightly, but I did not want to take him to camp, but I really needed a break, which is one of the things that the foundation does. We give parents a break. So when I took him to camp, he was crying, and when I tried to leave him there, he was holding on to me and screaming, and they had to pull him away from me, and I felt so bad when I left. I thought, how could I do that to him? But I knew I needed a few days to not deal with autism, and I felt like he needed camp. But every day I was expecting them to call and say, you have to come and get your son. But they never did call, and I was amazed. And when I went back to pick him up, he was like a different little boy. He was standing taller. He was smiling, being there around the water. He went to St. Francis Camp on the lake. So being around the water and the lake and the trees and the greenery, it was medicine for him. But I didn't let it be medicine for me because I was so worried about him while he was at camp that time. But I decided from now on, when he goes to camp, I'm going to take a trip. And that's what I started doing. I found out that camp was really, really beneficial for him. And that's why the Purvis Foundation pays for camp for people. And he likes camp so much that if I wanted to say, you're going to camp on Friday, and it was Tuesday, he would go get his suitcase. He was ready to pack up to go to camp. And I said, well, I can't say you're going to camp until he's actually going. And then another time at camp, the Salvation Army had a camp, and they had for people with handicaps. but they too did not take people with autism. So a friend of mine was working at the camp, and she asked if they would take PJ. And the only way they would take PJ was that if I came too. Now they were did physically impaired, mentally impaired, visually impaired. They handle every disability except autism. So back in the 80s, we were the orphan disability. So they said if I came to camp too to be his counselor, he could come. So PJ and I went to camp. That's the only time I've ever been to camp. But it was good for both of us. We went out on the lake in pontoon boats, and they did a lot of activities for the camp residents. PJ loved going out in the boat. So one day while everybody was at lunch, PJ and I didn't go to lunch with everybody else. We went with the employees after everybody else had finished lunch. So PJ wanted to go out in the boat, and he's pushing and pulling and crying and trying to get me to take him out in the boat. Well, I thought maybe we can go out in one of the paddle boats. So we walked down to the lake, and it dawned on me, everybody's at lunch. If something happens to me and PJ, nobody will know what happened, or nobody will know what happened to us. So I didn't know what to do now. He's trying to get in the boat, and we're on the lake. So there was a canoe that was sitting on the bank of the lake. So I thought, we'll sit in this canoe until I decide what I'm going to do. Well, we sat in the canoe by the lake, and I could just see PJ calming down, and his behavior was improving. After about 20 minutes, he was smiling. So I thought, well, maybe we can leave. So we got out of the canoe and went back up the hill. But he wanted, sitting in the canoe looking at the water was just as good to him as being on the water. So I was really glad for that. And that's one of the things that I just stumbled up on in dealing with PJ. I didn't always know what to do. I say I survived him and he survived me. But being the mother of a child like him also lets me know how blessed I am, and how blessed those of us who don't have a disability, how blessed we are. And that's why I feel that those of us who are more fortunate should help the ones who are less fortunate. And another writer that I wanted to remind you of is Les Brown. I can't think of the name of Les Brown's book, but I'm sure you remember him. He had a TV show at one time. Les Brown said, don't die with your music still in you. He said on people's deathbeds, most of the problems that people were upset about was not what they had done, but what they didn't do. So if there's something on your mind that you need to do, go ahead and do it, even if it's difficult or uncomfortable. They say that we make our greatest accomplishments on the other side of our comfort zone. So you can do it. You can get out of your comfort zone. A couple of things I wanted to mention when I was saying about PJ's problems and people with disabilities, but one of the sayings that I like is, in the land of the blind, the one-eyed man is king. Even a broke clock is right twice a day. A damaged tree can still bear fruit. So those are some of the sayings that I've collected after I decided to focus on ability instead of disability. Now, I'm still planning on having a 20 grand reunion. I haven't got any details for you yet, but if you stay tuned, I'll be keeping you informed about the details of the 20 grand reunion. The show is about over. I hope you remember to share comfort with other people. I hope you remember that you have peace and love to give. And I hope you think about attending the 20 grand reunion if we have it. And I want you to know that God is blessing us. Sometimes we can't see the blessing. They say a work is being done in the invisible. We don't see it being done, but he's working behind the scenes, doing things to make things better for us. So hopefully you will tune in next week for a spoonful of comfort. And until then, may the love of God enfold you. May the power of God protect you. And hopefully you will tune in next Tuesday at 1:30 for a spoonful of comfort. And I forgot to thank Renee. Renee is one of the staff members here, and she helped me a lot with some technology that I was trying to get done because I'm not technologically literate. I like writing and speaking, but when you give me technology, I'm not very good at it. But anyhow, until next week, I will see you, or you will see me, for a spoonful of comfort.